The Minister of Education at that time, Mr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, he spoke at a lecture that I am not diverging a secret, but a fact that when we in the government formulated the new education policy, we had Swami Vivekananda's teaching of man-making education before us. We put it therefore human resource development. Man-making education is put as human resource development. What are the resources in a human being? How are we going to develop them, manifest them? That is why he said we have considered our new education policy not to turn out clerks, engineers, doctors, but men and women with their resources manifested through education. Swamiji used the word man-making education, nation-building education, education which will help us to build up our nation, all the millions and millions of people manifesting their resources within and that strengthening the nation thereby. Swamiji has defined education in a famous sentence. Education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. Whatever is within us is being manifested. The perfection, the excellence that is within, that is being manifested. Religion also similarly. There is a divinity in all of us, but it is not manifest now. Through religion you manifest that divinity. These beautiful definitions they are, very scientific definition. And so, in education, Swamiji wanted two things. One is a scientific training of the mind. That is very, very important. Second is a humanistic concern for other people. Training the brain, training the heart. They must go side by side. If only the brain is trained, heart is not expanded, it will make for selfishness and corrupt life. The heart must be expanded. Human concern must be there. So these two go together. So he said, our education shall be based upon Vedanta and modern science and faith in oneself, Atma Shraddha. These are his words. By Vedanta he meant we develop our spiritual possibilities. We manifest them, making for very high character. And by science he meant clear thinking and a concern for facts and development of the rational faculties. Science, so understood, will destroy superstition. Superstition comes when the rational mind is not functioning. We have a bundle of superstitions coming from olden times. And in this age, by developing a scientific mind, we can reduce these superstitions, particularly those which are harmful. There are some innocent superstitions are there. There's no harm in keeping them. But there are harmful superstitions, harmful because it relates to our contact with other people. If that is by superstition, then we harm so many people, therefore they have to be avoided. So a stress on scientific attitude, scientific method, scientific temper. Is it true? Is it true? Science means search for truth. Search for truth without being swayed by our passions and prejudices. That is the nature of scientific quest. Truth is there. We have to investigate and find out. nature contains so many truths within herself. You have to knock at the door of nature. That's what you get by scientific thinking. Then you will understand truth. For 400 years now, the Western mind had developed that scientific attitude. They adopted scientific method, and they probed into nature. And how many truths of nature have been discovered by now? Our ancestors also had a scientific mind. They discovered many scientific truths. Later on we became more and more superstitious. We gave up science. Now we are resuming our scientific career. It's not something new to us. Scientific attitude was there, both in religion and in physical life. And so we discovered in mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, in many subjects, many truths which are now universal property. Similarly in religion, so many beliefs, so many practices are there, but we questioned them and found out what is the truth behind them. That is the difference between the two Sanskrit words, matam and tattvam. Matam means just my preference, my opinion. This I like, this I like. That's called matam. So all matams are based upon our particular like, our particular preference. Just like in the dining hall, I prefer this food, I prefer that food. That's my matam, so far as food is concerned. But our people ask this great question. Apart from all matam, what is the truth of it? That's called tattvam of it. What is the tattvam of a thing? And so, this distinction between matam and tattvam. Matam is what appeals to me. It's not a question of truth there. Personal preference. There is no truth about it. You can observe a holy fast on a Tuesday. Somebody may observe it on a Saturday. It is your own preference only. There is no scientific truth about it. So, apart from matam, what is the tattvam of a thing? In tattvam inquiry, you get subject of scientific approach and scientific truth. What is it in its own true nature, not what it appeals to me. Tasya bhava tattvam, Shankaracharya defines. Its essential form is called the truth of that form. So we always inquire behind all the matams, what is the tattvam of this matam? This matam, that matam, different worship, different ritual, different mythologies, all these are there. Behind all of this, what is the truth? That was discovered in India. That is why we have a scientific approach to the subject of matam. We can live in harmony with each other because of that scientific truth. Saying methods are various, goal is the same. Paths are various, goal is the same. This was a great discovery in the field of religion. In the field of science also, it is the same. Apart from how the world appears to me, what is the truth about this world? There was a usual belief, the earth is flat. Every day we can see, we feel the earth is flat. But what is the truth about the earth? What is the tattvam? Then our ancestors discovered earth is a gola, is a round, it's not flat. In immediate vicinity it is flat. But as a whole it is a round thing. Now these are all truths which our people discovered, matam and tattvam. And so earth is going round the sun, not sun going round the earth. That was also discovered in India. Theory of gravitation. What is the nature of weight of a thing? Weight is the measure of the gravitation exerted by the earth on that particular object. That was also discovered in India. Now all these things came because apart from our normal human attitudes based on mere sensory data, which give you a lot of matam. But take the sensory data and question them. When you question, you come to tattva, the truth of a thing, whether it is religion, whether it is physical science. So we built up physical science, we built up the science of spirituality, adhyatma vidya or paravidya, these are the words used. The scientific mind was very, very active in India for nearly 2,000 or 3,000 years. It's only last 1,000 years we became very weak in our scientific attitude. Along with it, we became full of matams and a good deal of superstition. That is being changed today. We have to thank the Western people for developing this scientific method and outlook in such a wonderful way. And so we resume our march in the field of science, and we resume our march in the field of the science of religion. The science of religion is the seeking for the truth of religion. When you seek, then you become a scientist. You know very well, in religion there are two dimensions. One is called ethnical dimension or matam. The other is called scientific dimension or tattvam. You are born in a religion. Father was a Christian, I am a Christian. Mother was a Hindu, I am a Hindu. In this way, according to the social circumstance, we are called Hindus, Muslims, Christians, etc. That is not scientific. That is purely ethnology. We call it ethnology. But scientific religion comes. What is religion? Seek for it. Then you become scientist. By seeking alone you can become a scientist. Do you seek religion? Or you are born in a particular family, therefore you are a particular religion. That is ethnical. The other is scientific. Apart from my background, what is religion? I must seek for myself. Now, nobody is born in a science. Suppose your father was a physicist. That doesn't mean you are a physicist. You may be anybody. Whereas if your father is a Christian, you are a Christian. Your father is a Hindu, you are a Hindu by birth. But in science, nobody comes to science through birth. He comes by critical inquiry, by questioning. Very important ideas to understand for all young people, that I am quoting Eddington, a famous British mathematician, astronomer, who lived 50 years ago. You can never understand the spirit of true science or true religion without keeping seeking in the forefront. Anveshanam, jijnasa, adana, seeking. With seeking only you can come as a scientist. But in religion you are born in a science. That's called the Madhuna aspect of religion. But in that Madhuna aspect, when you begin to question, why do I do like this? What is the meaning of this? That man is doing, what does he mean? If you begin to question like this, then you become scientist and religion. All true mystics were scientists and religion. Sufi mystics, Christian mystics, Hindu, Buddhist mystics, they never accepted what is given. They sought, they inquired, and they experienced the truth of religion. There you can see the scientific dimension of religion. What we need is the scientific dimension of physical life, external life, what you call modern science. The other is scientific dimension of religion, our inner life. These two sciences can go together. There is no conflict between the two. But Matam has an accepted form of religion. Because I was born in a particular religious family, I am of that religion. That aspect and modern science cannot work together, because there is no science in this. Sciences do not quarrel with each other. Physics will not quarrel with chemistry. But physics and chemistry will quarrel with mere matam. If that matam doesn't take one to that spirit of inquiry and seeking, which makes it a science of religion. Vivekananda therefore has spoken about science of religion. There is a scientific aspect of religion. You can question, you can inquire. And one great blessing of India there has been that scientific approach to religion. You can question. Any amount of questions you can ask. Truth is not afraid of question. Dogmas are afraid of question. A dogma, a belief, that is afraid of questioning. Truth is never afraid of questioning. The more you question, the better. The truth will shine more and more and more. 2 plus 2 is 4. You can question 1,000 times. It is perfectly true. It is true everywhere, east or west, no distinction. So spiritual truths are universal. They are not confined to a particular place. Scientific truths are universal. Though the Western people discovered scientific truths, truths are not Western. They are human. They are universal. Similarly in religion, there are profound truths which are universal. Though discovered in India, they are true of people in all parts of the world. This is how Swami Vivekananda has asked us to approach these two great subjects of physical science and religion. We don't usually say science and religion. Strictly it should be physical science and the science of religion. The word physical confines science to the sensory universe. That's the meaning of physical. Science itself is not conditioned by physical or non-physical, because you can have science of the physical world, you can have science of the mental world, science of spirituality. Science is one. Departments are many, and two main departments, inner and outer, sensory and supersensory. The word is supersensory, above sensory experience. The other is sensory experience. But there is no supernatural in religion in our country. Supernatural is not accepted by physical science. In the West, their religion was all supernatural. So there is no friendship between science and religion in the West. In India, we have no concept of the supernatural. Note it down. Supernatural is not found in Indian thought. Why? Our concept of nature is very wide. It includes physical life, it includes spiritual life. You study the Gita, 8th chapter, there Sri Krishna says, I have two natures, apara prakriti, para prakriti. Prakriti is the word for nature. Apara prakriti is this world, sensory world. Bhumirapo nalo vayu, kham mano buddhirevacha. All the 5 elements, akasha, vayu and buddhi, all this belong to apara prakriti, lower prakriti, which you study through science. But I have got a higher prakriti, apareya mitastvanyam. Apart from this, there is my para prakriti, which is that which sustains this universe in the form of intelligence, in the form of consciousness. That is my para prakriti. And these two together constitute the totality of experience. And Shankaracharya comments upon it in a beautiful sentence. Prakriti dvayadvarena aham sarvajna ishvaraha jagataha karanam. I am the cause of this universe in my twofold nature as avara prakriti and para prakriti. That is the statement in the Gita and in Shankara's commentary. So there is such a thing as physical science. The word physical reduces the area of that science. Science is without any limitation. But when you call it physical science, we limit it to a particular field of experience. What is that field? Sensory data. Whatever the senses report to me, based upon them, I create a science. That is called physical science. Bhautika Shastram, we say, Malayalam can say, Bhautika Shastram. Shastram itself is without any qualification. But when I qualify it, I limit it. So science limited by Bhautika is modern physical science. Science limited by beyond Bhautika, that is spiritual science, above the sensory level. Loka, Lokottara, two technical terms in Vedanta and Buddha's teaching. What is revealed by the senses is called loka. All these things which you see, this is loka. What is beyond the sensory level, that's called lokottara. And spirituality belongs to lokottara. The worldly life belongs to loka. So these are two interesting words which scientific minds in India coined to express two different concepts. But both are science. Science physical, science spiritual or non-physical. Both are science. Both are vidyas. See the language. It is vidya. Vidya is the word for knowledge or science. The word science itself means only knowledge. Verified, verifiable knowledge is called science. I have discovered a truth in science and I cannot ask you to believe in it. I will ask you, you also check it up. You also verify for yourself. Then only it is scientific truth. If I say I know something, you only believe it, don't question it. Then there is no science there. Science is verifiable. Verified and verifiable, falsifiable also. You can falsify it. Try your best, you can falsify it. So in this way, in religion we have a large number of truths which are verifiable truths, not to be believed. So mere belief never became the criterion of religion in India because of the scientific background which religion brought in the Upanishads. Belief to be tested by experience. In all your religion in India, you will find belief is secondary. Anubhava, experience is primary. Have you an experience of God? That's the language of religion in India. Not do you believe in God. You may believe, doesn't make any difference at all. But when you experience religion, a fullness comes to you. Therefore, neither physical science nor the science of religion refer to belief. Preliminary belief is allowed, just initial belief. But belief which must question. The capacity to question is making for science. Prashnagara, jijnasa, always questioning, is it true, is it true, is it true? So a belief that is true, we must hold on to. Simply belief has no meaning. That is why you can mark in Indian history, a man who doesn't believe in God is not treated badly in India. Nobody persecutes him, nobody kills him. In all other countries you will find if a man doesn't believe in God, he is persecuted, he is killed. We don't do it. So atheism, agnosticism, skepticism, all these are respected. The man must be a very excellent man, only he has no belief in God. What does it matter? Imagine, many of our systems have no God at all. Sankhya doesn't believe in God. Buddhists do not believe in God. Advaita Vedanta also, Jnana Marga doesn't believe in God. And yet, they are all spiritual systems. So this kind of atheism was not persecuted in India. In Europe, how many atheists have been persecuted? Burned away. Because their religion is based on belief. Ours is not based on belief, but on experience. I tried, I couldn't experience. You are quite honest. We respect you. Vivekananda said, it's good for you to remember, the best period of Indian history, he says, was at the time when an atheist will speak against God and worship from the steps of a temple. Nobody will harass him. Imagine the state of mind of the nation. An atheist is speaking from the temple steps. There is no God. Those who pass by to worship God, they won't harass him. It is your right. You can expound what you think proper. I have my faith, I live according to that. Such freedom, I don't think any other society has ever experienced before, because we discovered the tattvam behind all matam, that advaita drishti, advaita tattva, the one behind the many. When we discovered that, perfect tolerance and understanding came in this country of ours. You must grasp that principle very well. In the West it was different. All different sects, denominations, each one saying, I am correct, all others are wrong, persecuting each other. Catholics and Protestants persecuting each other. It has happened again and again. Millions have been killed away for not believing in what you think to be true. We don't have that story in such gruesome form in our long history because of a scientific approach to religion. If you have not experienced God, what does it matter whether you believe or not believe? I believe the sun is going round the earth. You can say that. I believe the earth is going round the sun. You can have any such belief. But we put belief to test. Then we discover the earth is going round the sun and not the other way. There is nothing to criticize or abuse or persecute in this matter. Search for truth makes for a tolerance, tolerating each other. So I will only give you a story given by Arnold Toynbee, a late British historian who has written 10 volumes on the study of history. He says, if 100 scientists sit together for a scientific conference and they discuss scientific truths, they may differ from each other, but it will not go to the extent of cutting each other's heads. No violence will be there. But if 10 theologians sit together to discuss about religion, within 5 minutes they will get angry and try to kill each other. Because there is truth, the object of search. Here it is dogma, that is the object of search. Wherever there is mere dogma, there is intolerance, violence, war. Where there is search for truth, there will be understanding, tolerance. Yes, you have seen, I have not seen yet, you shall continue the search. So a scientific attitude is essential for a nation to be a civilized society. We had that civilization very early from history. Not only Indian religions we tolerated, religion from abroad also we tolerated, Jewish, Zoroastrian, and today how many religions are coming to India, like Baha'ism and the Muslim sect also, Ahmadiyas. They are all living in peace in India, but they are all persecuted in Pakistan, Iran, everywhere. We don't have any such problem here. So, a scientific attitude in life and in religion can bring great blessing, harmony and peace. All are in search of truth. We want our country to continue in the same tradition. Because we don't know these things, we are committing blunders today. All this hatred, violence in the name of religion, which you find in India just now, this is not part of our own tradition. Our tradition is lying low. Nobody knows about it. So Vivekananda brought us this understanding that your country is devoted to the pursuit of truth, both in the physical world and both in the supersensible world. Therefore, try to develop that harmony, that tolerance, that understanding. What a beautiful concept it is. Ashoka has written in one of his edicts, when 2,300 years ago, we can read it even today, that in religion, if you praise your own religion and speak ill of other people's religion, you are doing great harm to your own religion. For in religion, harmony, concord is the right way. That is the famous Ashokan edict on rock. Samavaya eva sadhuhu. Samavaya alone is true in the world of religion. Samavaya is the word for concord. What a beautiful idea. Nowhere in the world will you find this experience repeated, this advocating the spirit of tolerance, understanding, mutual respect, only in India. That's why for hundreds and hundreds of years the nation is existing. No religious wars we hear about. Whereas in Germany, in the 16th, 17th century, 30 years of religious wars between Protestants and Catholics. Population dwindled from 25 million to 5 million. Constant killing. That's all historical facts there. We don't have here any such thing in India. And yet we existed. We're a prosperous nation. Great intellectual developments took place. So remember therefore that the heritage of India is essentially scientific and spiritual. Scientific physical, scientific spiritual. Both are scientific. And today a Ramakrishna comes, repeating that same ancient tradition, telling his disciple Vivekananda, don't accept what I say. Test me as the money changers test their coins. There you can see the scientific spirit. Test me as the money changers test their coins. Buddha said 2500 years ago, don't accept what all I say. Test it. If you find it is true, accept it, live up to it, and teach others also about it. Buddha's discourses. These are remarkable ideas. And on scientific method, there's a beautiful passage in Shankaracharya's commentary on the Brahma Sutras. We are living in Shankaracharya's birthplace. It is good to know what this great teacher said. In fact, from Karadi, a few months ago, E.M.S. Namboodiripad said Shankara destroyed science in India. Shankara ruined India's future. All that he said here. What has he understood? Parameshwaran has brought out a book containing so many articles on the subject. It is worth reading. Now in this context I am only telling Shankara's scientific mind in the Sutra Bhashya, introduction. He says there are two sets of truths. One is called Purusha Tantra Jnanam, the other is called Vastu Tantra Jnanam. Now the word Vastu means existing fact. That's called Vastu. Vastu Tantra Jnanam. Jnana based upon the existing Vastu. That is scientific knowledge. The other is Purusha Tantra Jnana. Jnana based upon one's own prejudices, preferences, love, etc. That is purely personal. It cannot be scientific. So, Vastu Tantra Jnanam, Purusha Tantra Jnanam, two words he has used. And knowledge of Brahman, the ultimate reality, is Vastu Tantra Jnanam. And particular matam and practice and ritual is Purusha Tantra Jnana. These are the words he has used. Why it is called Vastu Tantra Jnanam or Purusha Tantra Jnanam? He gives the reason. Kartum agartum anyatha kartum na shakyate. A Vastu Tantra Jnana, you cannot create, alter or destroy. It is there. You only recognize it is there. That's called Vastu Tantra Jnanam. The other is Purusha Tantra Jnanam. Kartum, agartum, anyatha kartum, shakyate. You can have it, alter it, remove it, according to your own sweet will. It doesn't depend upon the Vastu there. So it is called Purusha Tantra Jnanam. As I said earlier, I shall fast on a Tuesday. It's up to me. I shall fast on a Saturday. It is up to me. It is my preference only. There is no objective truth about it. But fire is hot. There is an objective truth. You can't alter it, you can't change it. You have to recognize the truth, that is all. And handle fire carefully. So that is Purusha Tantra Jnanam. So these are the two types of jnana Shankaracharya refers to. The whole subject of pure Vedanta, knowledge of the Atman, man's essential divine nature, is Vastu Tantra Jnanam. Is a Vastu, is a truth about you. You are essentially spiritual, essentially pure, holy. That is your true nature. You are a spark of divinity. Remember, this is called Vastu Tantra Jnanam, because you cannot alter it. You can't destroy it. But if you realize it, all the better for you. That's called Vastu Tantra Jnanam. Other things are all Purusha Tantra Jnanam. What kind of ritual you should perform, what kind of dress you should wear, there is no Vastu about it. According to your convenience, South India we have very bare body. In Kashmir you put on so many dress, worshipping in a temple. That is their condition, this is our condition. These are not scientific, these are human convenience. But the worship itself, the truth about it, that is absolutely the same. Same God is worshipped here or there. So Shankara's definition of Vastu Tantra Jnanam and Purusha Tantra Jnanam is a wonderful study of the scientific method and the personal method, personal preference method. Both have place in life. The whole of life cannot be merely scientific. There is plenty of space in human life for Purusha Tantra Jnana, likes and dislikes and preferences. I prefer the table to be like this or to be like this, that is your preference. There is no absolute rule about it. And so, life is a mixture of Vastu Tantra Jnana, Purusha Tantra Jnana. But Vastu Tantra Jnana must be clearly understood. Whatever is Vastu, realize the truth as it is, not as you want it to be. This distinction we have to keep in view. And so, you go back to the Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad. A student goes to a teacher. He wants to be taught the highest science of religion and secular science. And the teacher says, yes, two types of sciences are to be studied by a human being. Dve vidye veditavye. Two vidyas are to be learned. Parachaiva, aparacha. Paravidya, aparavidya. Higher science and ordinary science. These are the two words he has used. And what is aparavidya? All these physical sciences, economics, sociology, politics, all dealing with man's sensory life is called aparavidya, ordinary science. What is higher science then? Paravidya, yaya tadaksharam adhigamyate, by which the imperishable reality is realized. This is all perishable reality. There is imperishable reality behind the perishable. Just like ocean water, so many waves coming up and down, all the time going. These are perishable. Water itself is imperishable with respect to the perishable. So between the water and the wave is aparavidya, water is paravidya. Similarly, the whole perishable world, behind which is the infinite Atman, ever pure, ever free, ever the same, Akhanda, Sachidananda Swarupa, that is a Brahman. That is always there. That is Paravidya. So, along with Aparavidya, our education must contain a peep into Paravidya as well. You must get the elements of that Vidya in the beginning. Later on you can cultivate it in your own way, with your own individual struggle. So all worthy education must give us an insight into Aparavidya and Paravidya. And today, not only here, the Western countries, they are absolutely unhappy with the present education. Only Aparavidya, no higher thought at all, no understanding of the nature of the human system. What is human being? What are his dimensions? They are probing deeper and deeper in today's psychology in the West. And they are slowly coming to that state which our people reached, that infinite Atman behind this body-mind complex. Infinite, ever pure. That focus is there in you and me. That knowledge they want to attain. That is true religion. Gods and goddesses of heavens are all long ago gone. In the Upanishads you will find all the heavens have been completely removed. It is a fool who will try to go to heaven, says the Upanishad. What is there in the heaven? A better way of life than the earth, that's all. If you can't discover the truth here, how can you discover it there, says the Upanishad. Buddha did the same thing. Gita did the same thing. Going to heaven is a foolish venture. A comfortable life, that is all. Truth is to be realized here and now. The word here and now comes again and again. In this very human body, that truth is hidden in this human body. Man is the finest evolution of nature. This evolution of nature discloses some fundamental truth about nature, the infinite self from which the whole universe has come. That is hidden in your own inner experience, pulsing there. Try to realize it. By realizing this, you realize everything. Because from the Atman, the whole universe has come. All these various statements are there, which made for that harmony between inner life and outer life, between physical science, science of spirituality. Swamiji has brought us to this understanding, brought this to our notice, so that we can think of India developing both externally and internally. Externally by scientific application to agriculture, industry, etc. You develop a good environment. Internally by stabilizing your own inner life on the basis of the infinite Atman, which is your true nature, so that you don't become a mere slave of the external world and the technology created to deal with that external world. Man becomes free because he knows his true nature, ever free. Infinite is the nature of man. There is one single sentence or a phrase in the Chandogya Upanishad which conveys to you this profound message, and this is highly commended by many Western nuclear and other scientists today, and that is Tat Tvamasi, Tat Tvamasi. You are that. You are that. You are not this flimsy organic system. You are that infinite Atman, ever free. That is your true nature. Tat Tvamasi, Tat Tvamasi. That day, 2 years ago, I released a book in Malayalam by what is the person who wrote that Tat Tvamasi book? I released that book, Tat Tvamasi book itself. 1 or 2 editions have gone. In the West, there is a tremendous interest in this Tat Tvamasi. There's the truth about man. What a beautiful idea. And so, this teaching has come to us from ancient times. We are forgetting it. We are busy with the external world. Even though we are not efficient, we have not banished poverty and ignorance, backwardness, because that Tat Tvamasi ideal would have given us character. That was not emphasized. No emphasis on spirituality. Therefore, people become selfish. People become corrupt in every sense of the term. So we are not achieving even the sensory world and its conquest. Swamiji said, therefore, combine these two, Vedanta and modern science. Science needed for our physical welfare. Vedanta needed for inner welfare, a stable mind, a rich human inner personality. Combine these two, that will be the best education. You can take it for granted, as the people are experiencing all over the world, mere science, mere technology, then consumerism, then ecological imbalance, finally destroying man himself. So they are now looking at man. The spotlight is being turned on man. What is great about him? What is really true about him? There they come to the Upanishads, they study the Upanishads. You will find these studies are plenty going on among the thinking circles in the Western world. So we have it as our heritage and we are throwing it away. That's what we are doing today. That's what education has done to us today. That's why our character is very poor today. They are materialistic, Western people. But what beautiful materialism. They have solved their material problems. Our materialism has not helped us to solve our material problem. Something weak in our materialism. Public spirit, character efficiency, work efficiency, we don't have. They have all this along with their materialism. That is far better than our materialism. But it's not a choice between two materialism. We want to know the truth of man, the truth of the world. So Vedanta combines these two, Vedanta and modern science, with Shraddha, faith in oneself. I can, that attitude. If there is my Atman, my true nature, I shall realize it. I shall manifest it. I am one with all. That oneness attitude, the same Atman is pulsing in every being. Basis of democracy is that oneness of all of us in the political context. That's Vedantic teaching, the same Atman in every being. In his fullness, Atman is there in all of us, not in partial, but the Atman in you and me, and in the Prime Minister. The same fullness is there. Like modern democratic citizenship, it can never be partitioned, cannot be fractionalized. It is unique by itself. The Prime Minister has one vote, and the simple little village woman has got only one vote. Everybody is equal in democracy, we say. That is the nature of the Atman, the same Atman in every being. That realization must come to the people, along with capacity, and spiritual also is scientific, coming from the Vastu Tantra Jnana within oneself. The other is Vastu Tantra Jnana in the world outside. When they go together, a beautiful harmony will come, a harmonious human personality, naturally of human society as well. It is this direction the world is moving today, probing. Great thinkers are asking, what has India to give us? Toynbee, whose name I expressed earlier, he said before he died, the future of the world is assured through the Indian influence of that India, of Buddha, Ashoka, Ramakrishna, Gandhi. These are the words he has used. That India can solve the problems of the modern world. We belong to that India. We know very little of that India. We know only the India of sickness, suffering, corruption, all this going on now. That India we know. That healthy India, the Amar Bharat, we do not know. We have to know it today. If this convention can help at least a few people to know about that India, it will be a great success. I am very happy to be with all of you yesterday evening as well as today, and of course in evening also today. And thank you all. Namaskar.